Because right now, Trump's war with Iran is the least popular war America has fought since the invention of polling. I mean, that poll from The Economist and YouGov has Trump 30 points underwater when it comes to approval for his war. And as The Economist put it today, it took the war in Vietnam 6 years to become as unpopular as Trump's war with Iran has become in 6 months. We're on day 142 of this war, well past the 60 days a president is allowed to wage a war without the consent of Congress. And last month, both the House and the Senate voted to reject the president's war. Congress can't pass anything these days, Lord knows, but this war is just that unpopular. And now the war is widening because Iran-aligned Houthis in Yemen are attempting a naval blockade of yet another of the world's most crucial oil thoroughfares, the narrow waterway that connects Saudi Arabia to the Red Sea, which you can see on your screen right there, which accounts for the distribution, I should note, of 7% of the world's oil supply. And just to put that in perspective, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz has reduced the global oil supply by about 10%, according to NBC News. So now the Strait of Hormuz and this other vital passageway may both be closed. And while that means higher prices for Americans and people all around the world, Trump has refused to acknowledge the real cost of this war. Last week, the nominee for Pentagon Comptroller literally refused to tell the Senate how much the war was costing Americans. But anonymous intelligence officials have told the press that the cost is likely to exceed $100 billion. The Defense Department has similarly refused to say how many costly, hard-to-replace munitions have been used, while sources have told the press that the war has left our supplies drained. The same thing goes for the extent of the damage Iran has done to U.S. military assets. Trump said this war was about regime change. He has failed at that. Trump said this war was about Iran's missile capabilities. Then he reversed course. Trump said the war was about knocking out Iran's nuclear capabilities. But he already said he obliterated those back last year. In reality, U.S. intelligence says we haven't even set Iran's nuclear ambitions back a day. Trump has said months ago that he destroyed all of Iran's military capabilities, and yet here we are, again, targeting Iranian military targets 142 days into this war. The White House's narrative around this war is all so misleading that even Trump's most loyal pundits seem to be losing the thread here. I mean, even they seem to not understand or be able to explain how this all could possibly add up.
You know, CENTCOM says that there will be outsized action in retaliation, but I don't understand how it's possible that Iran has the capabilities to fight this way and continue to try to lash out at Gulf countries and U.S. military bases, because the U.S. has obliterated Iran's military, and the president continues to reiterate that.
It's almost, not quite, like she gets it. It's almost like she is starting to realize that the White House is lying about this war, that these things all can't be true at the same time. And as offensive as it is for the president to be lying about this war to the American public, it is even more offensive to the families of the Americans actually fighting it. Today, the New York Times reported that the Pentagon has been withholding information about U.S. troop casualties. I should note that a spokesperson for the Pentagon denied the Times reporting, calling it outright lies from partisan hacks. Okay. But it wasn't until after the Times reporting that the Pentagon announced that the number of troops injured in Iranian attacks in recent weeks was actually approaching 100. And this comes as the Pentagon identified 2 of the 3 active duty soldiers killed in action since Friday, 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan of Hawaii and 19-year-old Isabella Gonzalez of Texas. Right now, there are more than 50,000 U.S. troops deployed in the Middle East, and Trump is still lying about this war. Joining me now is Senator Mark Kelly, who serves on both the Senate Armed Services and Intelligence Committees and, of course, served himself. Thank you for being here,
Great
Senator.
to be here.
I want to first get your reaction to something that Donald Trump said yesterday when he was asked about the U.S. service members. And Chris Hayes was just saying this is very true. It felt a bit like a shock, I think, to many people in this country that 2 service members died on Friday. We learned more have been injured, given they keep hearing every day that this war is over. But let me play that for you.
Well, we feel very badly, but, you know, those great people, those great patriots are out there fighting that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran has been very, very badly damaged. They've lost everything almost militarily.
I know we were having some sound issues there, so let me just read part of this for you. Well, we feel very badly, but you know, those great people, those great patriots were out there fighting that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran has been very, very badly damaged. They've lost everything almost militarily. We've talked before about the loss and what it means to families. The total number of troops killed now stands at 17, two of them on Friday. What is your reaction to how the White House and how the president has handled this?
Well, every service member who volunteers to join the U.S. military, deploy overseas, they understand the risk. The risk is from doing something that's in furtherance of our safety and our national security. And people get that. I flew 39 combat missions in the first Gulf War. We've got millions of veterans that have fought overseas over the years, over the decades. And you know that's part of the deal. What you don't expect is to have a president that takes us into a conflict without an explainable strategic goal, without a plan, without a timeline, without an exit strategy. And what I see now is I see an administration flailing. He's back to talking about nuclear weapons. The Iranians weren't accelerating the development of a nuclear weapon. They're pretty much at the same place where they were when I came to the Senate 5.5 years ago. So how do you explain to those family members, like, why did their sons and daughters, in this case, parents in a lot of cases, children, why did they lose their lives? What was this for? How did this make us safer? And the result is, I mean, not only is this not making us safer, people are losing their lives, it's also having this huge impact on the American people. Just today, I was meeting with my ag advisory committee. So it's a bunch of farmers and ranchers give me advice. They tell me because of diesel and fertilizer, because of this war, their costs are up 45%. My question is, can you make money? Well, not right now. They can't. So you're going to see farms and ranches start going out of business because of a president who fundamentally doesn't know what he's doing and can't think strategically.
I know, and we wanted to talk about this today for so many reasons, including that I think a lot of people are just looking for information. It's not coming in a reliable way from the White House or from the Pentagon. You're on the Armed Services Committee. Do you feel like you have a good sense of the status of this war and what's actually happening, or any of the strategy here?
Sometimes, I mean, we've got to pull it out of them, right? We've got to request briefs. It often takes too long. Sometimes you feel like you're not getting all the information. You're getting pieces, whether it's from the Defense Department. I feel a little bit better on the Intelligence Committee. I'm also a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee on that side, but it's a challenge. I mean, we have a Secretary of Defense that's not focused on the right things. I mean, this week it was about testosterone. It's often about pull-ups.
What did you make of that, the testosterone focus?
The U.S. military does not need more testosterone. It needs better leadership. And that starts with the Secretary of Defense. It also starts with the Commander-in-Chief. I mean, ultimately, he is responsible. He's the one that hired Pete Hegseth, who is the most unqualified individual we've ever had in this position by far. They're firing the wrong people. I mean, Pete Hegseth is firing people because they're women and they're black. President should fire Pete Hegseth. He's making awful decisions. It's putting service members at risks that I would not have expected when I served, that a Secretary of Defense would make these sort of decisions, nor a president. I mean, I served under George H.W. Bush. Went to war in Iraq because Iraq invaded Kuwait. We had a goal to push them out, to support our ally. That's not this. You know, this is a president. I mean, who knows why he got us into this? Was it the Epstein files? I'm not sure. I'm not sure we'll ever know.
They have not had a briefing, a high-level briefing, since early May, which is very uncommon. I mean, I never served in the military, but having served in government a long time is very uncommon. Typically, there's a lot of briefings that happen, especially in a time of military conflict. There also, in advance of these two U.S. service members being killed on Friday, there were also at least 3 other undisclosed Iranian strikes, also in Jordan, that injured dozens of others and damaged several helicopters. I'm raising this because you keep hearing from them that they can't disclose information about operational aspects, about injuries, because of national security reasons. I'm going to call BS on that, but I want to get your thoughts on sort of what that justification and what it's withholding from the public.
They don't want there to be any accountability. They don't want to be criticized. I mean, have we ever had a president with thinner skin than Donald Trump. He doesn't like criticism. I mean, I said something that back in November that was basically followed law. I said I should be hanged. People criticize this administration. He sends the Department of Justice after them. We've seen that happen over and over again. You criticize the Department of Defense, you get a response sometimes from the Secretary of Defense. That's not what the Founding Fathers envisioned, with the separation of powers between the branches, and there would be the legislative branch holds the executive branch accountable, Supreme Court, is part of this, and we kind of work together. And you should be okay with criticism. I mean, I've been in leadership roles throughout my career. I used to tell my space shuttle crew members, question my decisions. Please do that. Because at times, maybe I'm making the wrong decision. You don't see that from this administration. And because of that, because of this lack of accountability and their desire to never be criticized, and a president that just wants yes people around him, this is what happens. You wind up in a conflict on the other side of the world with, now we're approaching 20 dead Americans, 100 injured, tens of billions of dollars spent, and costs skyrocketing for the American people when we have folks across our country that can't afford rent and health care and even food. That's the consequence of a president making such a bad decision as he did back in February.